Odiar, Garrone, Sorrentino, Maiuet, Dolan, et tant d'autres.
Sure.
Colin, how would you explain Last Things to Tom Cruise?
That's a good question.
How would you
I
make
explain it
that
to anybody?
suggestion?
I mean, I'd just be like, you love movies, man. You know, it's big. It's like something new with the art form. They're taking it and exploding it. Big rocks, it'll change your life. It's crazy.
Okay.
And he'd be like, awesome guy. Get him in the next movie. Thumbs up.
Maybe that's how I maybe with Tom Cruise I would actually vibe with, because I'm also very good at just saying nothing to get out of the conversation that I don't want to have. Or I'd just be like, movies, am I right? And he'd be like, yeah, for sure, we love the movie. And like, nice seeing you, man. It's to keep steady. And he'd be like, keep steady yourself. And we just go back and forth.
Yeah.
Right.
Sort of like an Alexa and Siri talking to each other.
Welcome to Can I Kick It? This is a podcast about film festivals. My name is Jesse Catherine Weber, and I'm joined by
Andy Gramuga.
Colin Ashley.
Emilio Diaz.
and we are also joined today to talk about Kelly Reichardt's new film, Showing Up, by Fran Hoepfner.
Yay.
Returning fave.
Welcome back.
Thank you for
From the
having
show.
me back.
Of course. Thank you for being back. I'll apologize up top for a couple of things. One is that one of my earbuds broke last night, and I have not had a chance to go get new ones. So if I interrupt anyone, it's because I can only hear you in one ear. And also there are, perhaps appropriately, currently 3 very loud orange cats in this house who are likely to interrupt at some point.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, Showing Up, played Cannes. We
Well,
didn't talk about it when
yeah,
it played.
Before
this
then,
is- we
Please.
maybe just want to leave the cut-in point now also
Sure,
for,
yes.
I think we will likely, though not certainly, have some news to discuss later this week that we can put here. All right, we're here. We've got sort of a lot of news. We've got another tidbit from Toronto. We've got our first little tidbit from Venice, and then we've got a whole Locarno lineup to go over. So let's go through.
none of these
those.
tidbits are in a grab bag, though. We do want to be clear
No,
about that.
absolutely
They're the
not.
Film festival's own tidbits.
They're the film festival's tidbits, and we are ordering them deliberately. So why don't we just start with Venice? They'll be happening before. First out of them and TIFF.
yes,
Locarno
sure,
will be
yeah.
first, but yeah,
Right.
we'll save the big thing
Right.
for last. So Venice has announced their opening film, which will be Luca Guadagnino's The Challengers, playing
Just challengers. No,
just
no
Challengers,
different
no the. All right.
Yes.
All right. Just Challengers. Which will be playing out of competition, which
Yes.
I had
Curious.
heard was maybe the plan, but seems a little odd, given that it does. It doesn't look. I guess it looks more commercial than Bones and All, but it doesn't look like more genre-y. So I don't know why it's not in competition, but it isn't.
Right.
But big Italian director, also big star. So
Right.
makes a lot of sense for that.
Some
slot.
up and comers.
Yep.
It's all happening.
Yeah. And will be important during next week's episode.
That's right.
And then TIFF, I guess we have a couple of things from TIFF. We had recorded already last week when Bertrand Bonello was doing a virtual Q&A at the Lightbox, and said that his new film, The Beast, will be at TIFF. Whether that means it's premiering there or playing at Venice and then playing there, we don't know, but that is quite exciting to me and kind of counters the, as I mentioned last week, the these early announcements are mostly not for me. This is very much for me. There's few things, if any, that I will be more excited to see there.
Is it an announcement though?
It's not an announcement, but I assume if he is the one saying it, it is true.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a nice.
It's a nice early confirmation.
Yeah,
of something
get something for me.
Yeah.
And then the thing that they did announce...
A little treat for Jesse.
Yeah, the thing that they did announce, which we're recording early on Thursday, so who knows, if they want to do 2 a week, they might announce something else later today. But yesterday, they announced another world premiere. Another somewhat surprising announcement, I think, that they will be world premiering Laj Lee's new film, Les Indésirables. Someday I'll just stop saying French names at all. I don't think there's any reason for me to have to do that. I don't like the way that language works. But his previous film, of course, premiered at Cannes, won the jury prize, was nominated for... I can't remember if it was already Best International Feature then, but for an Oscar. And then he co-wrote Athena, which was at Venice last year and won an award. So I think, for a moment, I think specifically mention it as like this movie isn't done. I would have liked to have had it. And so I was just assuming, it'll be done in time for Venice and it'll be at Venice because there's a little bit of a relationship there. But not so, which is interesting. It's certainly like different from, like last year, the announcements in between Glass Onion and Fabelmans were all just like, movies that like it made sense for them to play, and some people ended up liking, I think, but just was like, who is getting hyped for these movies? Which I don't think this movie's necessarily getting people hyped, but it at least feels like they're like, we're announcing a thing that is like sort of a get for us, in that you might have expected it to premiere at a different festival. Whether it could have gotten into Venice, who knows? I would imagine that Venice probably just had not made the decision at this point, and they were just like, all right, if Toronto wants to grab us early and they convinced them that they could give them a good launch, why not?
Yeah, I think it's for sure they're announcing it early because it was a get for them, and they just wanted to like stamp it, like they just wanted to put their mark out there, like, we are getting European films, we are getting this kind of thing.
Yes. And still is not like a get where like a random person, a member of the public who's thinking about attending TIFF is gonna be like, this is a get, but like maybe this is like a more press focused early announcement.
Maybe.
But yeah, we will continue to have TIFF updates, excuse me, as they come in. So now moving on to Locarno, I think the headline here is that like this feels like the most sort of back to usual lineup for Locarno since Carlos Chatrian left, or at least since the pandemic started. I feel like that first year in 2019 actually looked pretty similar to the previous years, but then they immediately moved on from the person who programmed that, and so this is the first of Gianna Nazzaro's lineups that, like, I don't think it is necessarily totally overcome the fact that like Chatrian went to Berlin and Berlin is now just like slightly higher profile Locarno, but this feels, even if it still is like, it's maybe smaller stuff that wouldn't have been Berlin, it does feel much like deeper than the previous few Locarnos have felt. And I think last year ended up, there were like less directors maybe where it was like, oh, I know who that is, but ended up feeling pretty deep once it got into it too. But this is the first one in a while where it's like, oh yeah, you can look at the lineup here and see like easily, or I at least can look at the lineup and easily see how like, oh yeah, I could go to Locarno for a week and a half and like easily put together 30 movies that I'm interested in seeing. So starting with the, and because it feels deeper, I'm just going to kind of try and go through quickly-ish and not even necessarily mention everything that I could say something about. But going through competition, The Human Surge 3, directed by Eduardo Williams, is, I think, something that will be interesting. The Human Surge was a Locarno premiere, I believe, kind of Williams' breakout, and he has done some short work since then, but a follow-up has been anticipated, and
so there's not a 2.
There's not a 2.
He's just jumping
I think
from the first one to
so
3.
that's everyone is excited to see why he skipped 2. There is a poster for this movie out. It looks kind of crazy. I can send it in the chat, except that I'm not going to do that because I would have to stop talking.
Sure.
There's a new Lev Diaz film. He has been at Locarno many times, but last year the 2 movies he had were at Fid Marseille and Venice, so he is back. Only 215 minutes.
No intermission required.
Probably not. I don't think he ever has intermissions. Sure. I think he has always just kind of been like, we can, you can go pee whenever. I don't really care. Sure. Bob Byington back at Locarno. I feel like he is not. He's a relatively prolific director, but one who has not had a movie out in the time that we have been a podcast.
Right. The cast of this really struck me.
Yes, and this is like all people who he has worked with quite frequently. David Krumholtz is the lead. There's a very funny picture of him that's the still. And he's worked with Byington a lot. Martin Starr is in it, who's worked with him a few times. Stephen Root, I think, has also worked with him before. And he does have like a company of like Nick Offerman has been in a lot of his movies. And a lot of them have, I think, been working with him since before they were famous. Like, there's a movie that wasn't released at the time, but he shot in, like, the late 90s, early 2000s that, like, Offerman is in, and Krumholtz and a few other people. So he's been around for a while and clearly has relationships with these people. And, yeah, he's someone who just like has a bunch of movies out that sometimes people like, but like don't get any kind of theatrical release. And I've never been like, oh, I've got to check out a Bob Byington movie, even though some of them sound vaguely interesting. So maybe this will be the one. Lousy Carter. I'm not sure if I said the title. What else have we got? We've got, of course, Radu Jude's new film, which has a very long title that I had to click through to get to the English language version of. Do not expect too much of the end of the world. 163 minutes long. I think I Do Not Care If We Go Down in History as Barbarians is long-ish, but not quite that long. So I think this is his longest movie. But Romanian director recent Golden Bear winner for Bad Luck Banging or Looney Porn. I think this is maybe the sort of the international director with the highest profile who they got. I don't know how likely it necessarily would have been that this would have premiered at Venice. Right. Especially now, having seen a trailer, it looks like he is throwing stuff at a wall even more than with Bad Luck Banging. The trailer, it just like looks insane. But I'm into it. I feel like a lot of people have their impression of Bad Luck Banging has kind of declined since they saw it. And I feel the opposite. I'm just like, that movie he's doing a bunch of stuff. I really, and it looks like he's doing even more stuff here, so looking forward to that. Nina Hoss is in it. Petzold actor.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some more long movies. Rainer Sarnet, who's an Estonian director who did a movie called November maybe 5 years ago that I remember having a fair amount of buzz. I think mostly just for like looking crazy. There's a first film from a Ukrainian director, Marina Vroda, who I think maybe didn't win, but competed for the short film Palme d'Or a few years ago, so that's something that might get some attention. A Quentin Dupieux movie, though right. not the one that we knew was coming. Dali. This one is called Yannick, and is an hour long. I think I was vaguely aware of him having something about him making a gorilla movie after Dali, so...
I'm looking at the Variety article. The logline says it's a surprise movie already set for French release in the summer. So it's like they're getting it out there. Yeah, they're really pushing it.
He's in his making movies period, because I've been I was like, oh, Quentin Dupieux, Deerskin. He's back from Deerskin. He's made 3 movies since then, and then has this one and another one probably out there.
Yes, I feel like he kind of has always been in a making movies period, but maybe I think maybe before Deerskin there'd been a little break, and he's gone back into overdrive of late. Maybe the next movie will be called Lorik. Yannick and Lorik, like Yanni and Laurel.
Yeah, I got there before you
said
that.
No one had any reaction, so I wasn't sure if it was a we don't
simply
like
not
this
worthy of a
or
reaction.
We don't get it. Kind of could have gone either way. I think that the
too bad Cullen's not here. He would have liked that.
Maybe I can only hope. The directors of the present section is one where often stuff that people like comes out, but also a section where, sort of their uncertain regard, but also even more than that, like rarely a director that people have heard of. The only thing that stuck out to me there is that Derek Campbell, a Canadian actor who has worked with, why can't I remember her name? A Woman Escapes is the most recent movie they did together. It's Not Gonna Come, as well as the star of Anna 13,000 Feet. The Piazza Grande section is interesting in that they don't have the, big U.S. blockbuster that they usually have one or two of. The only American production that sort of has stars is Theater Camp, which will be it is often a movie that is out in the US by the time it plays here.
Right. So I guess what would they be looking at? Because Dial Destiny played can. Like, there's like, I don't know if there's.
I mean, they just like take whatever. Like it was Bullet Train last year. It's not. They're not like looking for something with prestige. It's just like what's something that people
like
will come
or
watch outside.
Like...
That I would imagine is getting a simultaneous release everywhere. It would have to be an August movie probably, which I'm sure there are options, but I guess nothing that was mutually decided to be a beneficial option. There is a secret screening one of the nights, so possible that I wouldn't imagine that that's what they would be doing with a secret screening, but maybe. And then like Yann Demange has a movie that Riz Ahmed is in, who is also getting some kind of special award. Yeah, though that's a short film actually, so I would imagine playing before something else. And then like a couple Cannes premieres, Anatomy of a Fall and The Old Oak. And a few other things where I'm just like, oh yeah, I kind of know who that director is, or there's someone.
Loach is making the rounds with his last one. He wants to to see the world.
Last one in air quotes. I'm just looking at August. It is like they could have taken Meg 2. That's got like a director who is sort of a name.
Get Statham out there. Get him. Get
that is kind of like
there.
That's it's like that or like or Gran Turismo, I guess, are the only two where it's like you could kind of see
that'd be really funny. God.
Yeah.
David Harbour and what's his face? Why am I blanking on his name?
Orlando Bloom.
I
saw that trailer, or I don't know. Like if you go further, like I'm sure they
Bloom
would have been
so bad in that movie. After that, I mean, the trailer's bad in general.
Dreadful trailer.
The trailer's really bad.
Yeah,
but Bloom
one of
in
the
particular,
worst
I'm like, that's a really special.
I've seen of recent times.
Yeah,
I mean, like going into September, like I'm sure they would have been thrilled to have the Equalizer 3 and get Denzel Washington out, but like. Late August, it really is like they're not going to show Blue Beetle or Strays on the Piazza Grande. I suppose perhaps White Bird, Not a Wonder Story, but none of these ended up happening. Well, another difference from recent years is that I don't remember the out of competition section having so many big names. I feel like the things that are not competing that are sort of big have mostly tended towards the Piazza Grande in recent years, or have been like mid-length features that go in the there's a section for shorts and mid-lengths, but there are a number of like directors who their work would certainly not make sense on the Piazza Grande, who are premiering movies out of competition. Carolyn Poggi and Jonathan Vanel are directors who I've heard good things about, who just seem like very Locarno-y. You have a movie called Best Secret Place, another hour-long film. Paul Vecchiali is a French director who passed away at the beginning of this year, who has his last movie premiering here, Bonjour la Langue. I guess the opposite of Adieu à la Langue, one of Godard's later movies.
He's saying, fuck you, Godard, I'll show you.
Perhaps, and he made it another 6 months, so I guess he did. Bertrand Mandico's movie from Director's Fortnight is playing out of competition here, but then he also has 2 short films premiering, one of which looks like maybe a companion to Conan, and one of which seems like maybe a different thing. Denis Coté has another film.
Sure.
for the third year in a row, I think. He had one. The last two were both at Yes, because they had one at Berlin competition last year, and then one that was in Encounters the year before that. But is here in Locarno now. This certainly... it ended up seeming weird that the one that they put in competition ended up in competition. I don't think it ended up actually being any more accessible than the one that had been in Encounters a few years ago. Which I know both me and Andy saw, but a name is coming to mind, but I feel like it might be the name of a different movie. Was it?
It was the Outside one.
Yes, which the name that's coming to mind is Outside Noise, but I believe Outside Noise is, that's Ted Fent.
That's the other one. The other one of those that I saw that year.
Yeah. But yeah, his movie is called Mademoiselle Canopsia.
Is it Social Hygiene?
That's
yes,
what it was.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Which was just
which
a
was
bunch.
Good.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of people standing not near each other outside, yelling at each other.
Right. I asked a stupid question at the Q&A, and he gave me a curt answer. It was great.
That's nice. Let's see. Anything else standing out to me? Barbette Schroeder has a new movie. The Caroline Poggi, Jonathan Rennell movie now appears twice on the webpage, which is interesting because it appeared 0 times yesterday, and I kept being confused when it was in the press releases. There's a movie by a director who I've not heard of named Ran Huang from Hong Kong, but called What Remains, that stars Andrea Riseborough, Stellan Skarsgård, and then
for Oscar.
I can only assume, I don't know if this is another brother that we're not aware of named Gustav or some other familial relation, but Gustav Skarsgård.
Another Skarsgård.
Well, 2 more Skarsgårds, because he co-wrote the screenplay with Megan Everett Skarsgård.
Wow.
Now I feel like I gotta look up who exactly these Skarsgårds are.
Right.
Gustav.
I mean, do we think
Gustav
this
is another
gonna...
brother? Of Alexander
yeah.
and Bill. Yeah.
He one of his known fors is Evil, but not the Evil that Andy would know. A film from 2003, it appears. And then Megan. Megan is Stellan's wife.
Oh.
Okay.
Stellan's wife, sure.
Yes.
A Real Family Affair then.
Yep.
But and Andrea Riseborough's To Leslie follow-up.
Of course.
It's got the buzz.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I think it's gonna be, you think it'll be a small film with a big heart?
Maybe. Yeah, I
Small
wonder.
heart.
Yeah, it's unclear what Megan Everett Skarsgård's previous career is. Her only other credit is having produced a short film in 2013 on IMDb. Yeah, I don't know. She's not Gustav or Alexander Bill's mother. They got married in 2009 and do have 2 children.
There's another one
together.
coming up? Great. More Skarsgårds.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
The first one was born in 2009, Ossian Skarsgård. And he's already started.
Credits on IMDb.
Now hold on. This is, let me see exactly.
God. When there's finally enough Skarsgårds to be an all Skarsgård movie, it's gonna be huge.
Ossian Skarsgård's first role is a voice-only role as the young version of Max Irons' character in The Wife.
Wow.
And he has more recently done a couple of... he's in a movie called Burn All My Letters last year. That it looks like he was also playing a younger version of someone. Yeah, and then has a TV show that he's in coming up this year. It looks like more Skarsgårds, and maybe even one more on the way. And I think that is, and they are kind of very known for having really strong retrospective programming as well, which is not so much our beat. And as I said, there's other stuff where I was like, oh, I kind of know who that is. So maybe will be more stuff that we will talk about it when it premieres or when we have a chance to see it. But for now, I think that is all I have on Locarno. So back to Showing Up. And now we're back to talk about Showing Up.
Which played at Cannes, and we didn't talk about it at the time because Emilio, I think you missed it. That was
it was the last thing.
Yeah,
right.
A lot of people missed it at Cannes.
Yes.
And then had a lot going on.
Yes. And then traditional A24 fashion sort of sat on it for a year.
Yeah.
Barely put it out in April.
Yep.
And now it's on. Did
it do any other festivals in between? Did it do?
It did New York.
Right.
Yes.
And that it played a few other places internationally. I think New York is the only festival in North America that it played.
Sure.
But they were keeping a tight lid on it for whatever reason, as I think we complained about many times throughout the fall and winter.
Right. And then they started to do a release for it, including I was getting trailers for it, and then it never actually opened here. It just was I guess it didn't do well enough to merit the platform release that they like to do. And so it's on VOD now, and it is now available for rental on VOD. You don't have to pay $20 to own it on VOD. So that's how I watched it.
But her seventh feature,
something like that. Following up First Cow.
Yeah, we talked about
another
First Cow.
Movie that barely got released, but for slightly more justifiable reasons.
Yes. But I mean, that was also, it played at New York in 2019, and then they held
it did also skip a bunch of festivals. Yes.
Yeah, and then they did the Sundance Berlin thing.
It didn't do Sundance. It did Berlin. Sure. It made its international premiere in competition at Berlin 5 months after it premiered at Telluride.
First Cow did?
Yes.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
because there was we've talked about it, I think, but there was a weird thing where Venice even said we really wanted to show First Cow, and A24 told us that we had to take 3 other movies that we didn't want to show, or else it wouldn't be worth them making the trip.
So crazy.
Which, sure. And so they premiered it and Uncut Gems and Waves at Telluride, none of which are movies that should have premiered at Telluride.
It's also just weird to think of those movies coming out of the same place at the same time. Uncut Gems is such a different world than the world I saw.
Those are all movies that were released before the pandemic started.
It's
that was such a crazy New York Film Festival year. That was the Irishman year.
Yes, Irishman. Yeah.
Crazy.
You saw it at New York, right, Fran?
Which?
The Showing Up.
No. So, I saw it in New York, but I actually saw
Sure.
the exclusive pre-Cannes screening for New York critics going to Cannes, but I didn't go to Cannes. And the only reason I got into the screening, and the second I walked into that screening, everyone was like, "Oh, and you're going to Cannes?" And I was like, "No, leave me alone." And I had to do this embarrassing sort of no, I'm not actually going. And it's because my editor had double booked or double assigned Moon Age Daydream. Sure. And that was supposed to be one of my reviews that month. And took Moon Age Daydream away from me, but then was I guess we have the Reichardt. If I think to apologize, they gave me something really good, which very rarely happened.
Sure.
So that's how I got into that, is truly by mistake. So I didn't even have to go to Cannes, but I was also one of 30 people who saw this in 2022 and then just had to sit on their thoughts about it. But I also wound up hating Moon Age Daydream, so I'm really glad I saw the Reichardt.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's about Michelle Williams. She's a sculptor, and it's about this week in her life where she's getting ready for a show. And her landlord is her former friend, or I guess current friend, but they've been friends for a while, Hong Chau, and she also is working on a show.
Two shows.
It's sort of just
Two shows.
excuse me. And then it's just about sort
really
of the chaotic week for Michelle Williams. A bird gets attacked by her cat.
Michelle Williams, doesn't have any hot water. That's a big running plot point. She's really just generally unhappy. She's a very unhappy character. I think
That's
it really was remarkable, like how I don't know, it especially like the way that she handles like conflict and adversity is like, you know, at once familiar and recognizable to me, in that she like doesn't want to really push, but she also like, there's a lot of like feeling of like, I don't know, I had a lot of feeling of like, well, there's some actions you could take maybe that you're not taking to like solve these problems, but it seems like you just sort of want to sit in the problems of it all.
Maybe. That's interesting to say that she's unhappy. I don't really see... I see her more as, like, timid and, like, nervous. Really? And maybe, like, resigned.
I think she's just a curmudgeon. I actually think she's really happy.
Yes. Yeah, unhappy... That didn't really... I didn't see that. Because, like, what it reminds me of, which is a very silly comparison, is there's a joke on 30 Rock where... Tina Fey's character goes to her high school reunion, and she's like, I don't want to go. They all hated me. I was a nerd. Right. And then it's like the flashback, and she's like bullying them because she thinks that she's like quiet or whatever. And I just kept thinking about like, I rewatched it, and Hong Chau, I felt very sympathetic to her character, oddly, as the sort of landlord. But and watching it the second time, I feel like it is a very generous to both Hong Chau and Michelle Williams, and it's like this sort of story about this friendship that doesn't really hold what it used to, and but just Williams thinking that she is like in the right the whole time, and she is mostly. I mean, her hot water doesn't work. That's like inhuman,
that's a big problem for sure.
And it probably makes you go crazy. But just like the way that she, she's like so angry at Hong Chau when she calls her and is like, your fucking bird cost me all this money, and it's like, you are maybe like, you're both going through like a similar thing. She's like stressed about her show, and so is Hong Chau. It's just, I think the way that it shows both of their sides is very diplomatic in a way, and I was very surprised by that the second viewing. But yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering like where we all are on Reichardt, because I was trying to think about this movie within the context of her other movies, in that she's sort of a person I've found hard to pin down. Like I have tried to find the through line, which is maybe a little late. Like that's not necessarily an avenue of criticism you have to go down with everybody. But I do think like if I have found any, is that I think her movies are often about like how it's like how the right thing and the thing that's gonna make you feel good aren't necessarily the same thing. I think they're always like, there's always like in conversation. I think God, I forget the name of the movie that is a Western. I forget.
Meek's Cut Off.
Meek's Cut Off. Yeah.
Meek's Cut Off. Yeah, Meek's Cut Off is in particular is very much like a movie where somebody maybe makes the right decision and it maybe does not end well for them, even though it is what feels correct. And that is sort of what I came to at the end of Showing Up, where it's just like this movie about how all these sort of legitimate grievances this person has, how Michelle Williams has, but also at the same time, it's just like, what can you really do? Like, you really can't be put into, like, all these people are in sort of weird, tough positions, and you sort of just have to be okay with not being able to be in control of certain aspects of your life, with how she
and like
treats her brother, and how people respond to the work, and how things happen in those realms.
Yeah, certainly the relationship with Joe, the Hong Chau character, is like that, in that like they should not be have her friend be her landlord. Like, that's just a relationship that isn't going to work, but also, like, she does not have another option that would allow her to do the work that she does, probably.
Yeah.
It's hard to think of what a thematic through line is for her. I think of her through line being much more like tonal and stylistic.
Yeah.
And these like sort of lackadaisical like meditations on character. I absorbed like every interview I could with her when Showing Up had its theatrical release here, and I think it was maybe on Little Gold Men or Marin. Those were like the two big ones I always think about, where she was like, yeah, I had kind of wanted to do like a high school comedy, and this is as close as I could figure out how to get to that. Like,
very funny.
I think crazy. She gets like a genre idea in mind, but it always gets like filtered through her kind of just like melodical paced sensibilities.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie that this of hers that this feel at least that the dynamic between Michelle Williams and Hong Chau feels very close to, for me, is Old Joy. Even though that the characters, the Will Patton and Daniel London characters have become much more disconnected, just like aren't around each other as much, whereas these two people are constantly around each other. They're not really similar characters, but it's a similar dynamic. And I think I also had the reaction that a lot of people have to Old Joy, where they're like, obviously one of them is in love with the other one. Like I even read, I don't remember where it was, but I read a review or maybe just like a letterboxd thing or something where they thought that Michelle Williams was being mean to Hong Chau after she sleeps with Andre Holland because she's jealous. And I was like, she's not jealous of Hong Chau. Did we watch the same movie?
Sure.
And like, you know, it even feels like at the end, Hong Chau kind of trying to push her towards the visiting artist.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think she's... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Please.
Oh, I don't think she's, like, romantically jealous. I think she's jealous of, like, the sense of whimsy afforded to someone who's making passive income.
Sure.
Especially when they're doing bad at her job, like, when Joe is doing a bad job being a landlord, I would say. And that, like, yeah, you get to have a party or go to a party if you have hot water or something. It's a lot of, it's like this weird thin line that's not quite jealousy, but it's like, yeah, would be nice. Would be nice if I had that also. This embittered kind of sensibility.
Yeah. There's the, it is just like the energy of Hong Chau's character where it's like, there's just a layer of like casual coolness. Like every time before she arrives in a scene, you hear like her car pull up with loud music blaring. There's the little detail that I really liked was after the scene with Andre Benjamin where they like hook up or whatever, and she like walks out and her phone is just under her car, and she like gets on the ground and reaches out and like pulls out her phone. I was like, this is a person who's so casual that like they aren't worried about their phone charging while they're asleep. It's a different set of priorities. But
I think a lot of people in the movie are, if not that level of chill, they are sort of go with the flow to a certain extent that just drives her very crazy. That just where she just like, she feels like she's the only person who's like sort of trying to keep everything going, keep everything grounded.
Sure. The just in regards to Reichardt's other work, when we talked about First Cow, I was sort of like mezzo on it, like didn't really have the experience that a lot of people had with that movie, but I love some of her other work, and like other ones, you know, I obviously I would need to get a fresh perspective on a lot of them. I watched them a while ago, but this one, there's obviously such a shift in like the energy, and there's like such an organic quality to all of this, and like the way Blovelt's, you know, there's such a texture to the film grain in this that provides this quality. And there'll be scenes where it just sort of his camera will like drift off and choppily zoom in on like a cat doing a weird thing. There's so many animals in this movie. There's like the dog that's always sleeping in front of her office. There's the pigeon. There's the cat. It's very alive.
Yeah, and animals certainly are just like a cheat code to making your movie more interesting to look at.
Sure, yes, or even to hear. There's so much like just like the sounds of the cat when you see its paw like going under the door. But there's also just the high school comedy really sticks out because all the stuff at the school has that humor to it where there's like all the people sort of doing interpretive dance. And the visiting artist is like, I'm trying to figure out, I don't know what this class is, but I want to take it. And it's like thinking and movement. And, Williams's delivery is very dry. But this school that's like happening around her where, Andre Benjamin's playing the flute all the time. And there's a really great 2 letterboxd reviews from one of the people playing a student in the movie where she's like, here's all this stuff that like happened while we were showing up. And there's a great one that's like during the scene at the gallery at the end, like she's like, I saw John Magaro across the street take down like an entire pack of American Spirits. And it's just really funny, like that scene when he comes in and starts eating the cheese.
I mean, that I had a harder time with this movie and the last scene that last sort of sequence did sort of bump it up for me. But I do I don't know, I found it the like Lizzie very hard to take and like very frustrating a lot of the time. And I think like the whole thing where she's like complaining about how there's too much cheese and then yelling at her brother for eating all the cheese.
She's nervous.
I guess, but like I was just like, I wanted her to chill out like all the other characters for some reason.
I find her hard to take, but in that I'm like, oh yeah, that could just be me.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in there for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think like, the fact that she does like that like it's like the family business too is really interesting. I think. And like that the depiction of the way that she's connected, like she works directly under her mom. Her dad is retired. They're divorced. But he's also like, he has an artistic background and is just hosting 2 random people at his house. And then her brother.
Judd Hirsch is the father, we should say.
Yeah, Judd Hirsch plays the father. And then her brother is John Magaro, and he seems like he's having some mental health issues, while also. He is the way that he like talks and frames it is often through like that artistic sort of language that like everyone they all share with each other, right? The conversation about earthwork, I think, is like really like, and she finds him digging a hole. He's having some sort of an episode, and she's like, oh, I didn't know you were into earthwork, and he like talks about how everything's earthwork, poetry is the earth's language, and like the way that like how the glimpses you get of how probably her upbringing in this environment and how she has stuck with it are interesting to me, because I do feel like maybe, and like clearly she gets a lot of satisfaction out of doing artistic work, but I think a lot about the artistic life that is available to her is not as satisfying to her, and I think like that contrast is very well drawn and interesting, and you see how she has gotten to this place pretty clearly.
To be clear, I don't think my memory is that she does not call the whole earthwork unprompted. I think he says he's doing an art project, and then she says, oh, I didn't know you do earthwork.
Right. Yes.
I'm working on a piece. Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
She's so mad when the mom calls him creative, and she's like, well, a lot of people are creative. But this is sort of the interesting divide, I think, between a lot of creative people, is I think you have a lot of people for whom ideas come really naturally, who are kind of capable of always coming up with something new that feels creative and original. And then there are people who are maybe not that innovative, but are really good with like the work ethic required to, if not make a living, then do the work consistently. And these 2 types of people, I think more often than they collaborate, actually really hate each other because they just want what the others have. I have a lot of friends throughout different mediums who I think have the exact kind of like Joe Lizzie dynamic and like cannot talk to each other about work, because it's like completely speaking across parallel lines. They'll never figure out how the other one does anything.
The all the stuff with just the way that it sort of, you see the progression of like the sketches at the beginning of all of her sculptures during the credits to like the finished product, obviously at the show, and like how lovingly it photographs all of the art, all of the sculptures specifically, is really, I mean, it's just so beautiful. The movie looks insanely gorgeous. But there's just the way that it lets you sit in that process, I think, is very plays with that like contemporary contemplative cinema thing that Reichardt is part of, and then also is like bringing in this exuberance or whatever, this quality of just like seeing her make the thing, seeing her like scratch it with the fork, and like she's got this nice little studio space in her garage, seeing everything dry.
I mean, I think the thing that's indicative of where what the movie is trying to do is all the random shots of just like random art students working on their little project, and how it's sort of hard to see whether these shots are like loving or if they're kind of making fun of them. And I think that is sort of the line at which the movie is operating, which is sort of like whether it exists in her perspective of just being like everybody's too loosey goosey, like this isn't what art is, or this is what art is everybody just looking for a way to express themselves in their own way. What's her job? Like, she's not a professor.
She's a receptionist,
right?
and
she's like an admin
office
assistant.
organizer or something. Yeah.
She might be like a registrar or something.
Sure,
like that. Or like
Oregon College of Art and Craft.
Administrative coordinator or something. We definitely, like, my grad program had our equivalent of a Lizzie,
someone's daughter.
No, it was not someone's kid, but it was like that kind of role and was sort of like similar vibe. But you always had to figure. It took us a really long time to figure out what to talk to her about, to not just be like the annoying people with admin issues, and we realized it was like K-pop.
Sure.
So we all got a little into K-pop to be able to be like, hey, listen to this new BTS song. By the way, my email address is like being so weird. But a great
like, butter sweeter or butter hotter? Which one do you like better? All of the ins and outs. Yeah. The guy in the office with her who's just like trying to like get through to her, and then eventually when she's got the pigeon, he's like, she thinks the bird's stressed out, like roasting her, is really
but
really
he's like he took a pigeon to the vet.
He's like, you shoot pigeons like when you're keeping it.
The funniest thing about the office dynamic to me was not even something I noticed, but that Phil noticed when we saw it, which is that the mom is so ornery when someone gets like a personal package to the school, but it's like she brings her dog every day. And that is so classic, like, boss workplace thing of like, okay, I can do this, but you're not allowed to do this.
Yeah, I think it's like she's got the box and she's like, what is this? Like, disgusted.
Right, and she's like, it'll be in my office. Like,
yes.
He has
Someone will have to come pick it up.
To get it,
I mean, we mentioned him a few times. I do, Andre Benjamin, talk about like a chill guy, the coolest character ever. I think when we talked about Red Shoes, Andy was like, I want to be Anton Walbrook in this, and that is Andre Benjamin. I'm just like, let me just walk around with an empty coffee cup, not really worry about anything, fire some pottery in coveralls. And I think his scene with Williams, where they get the stuff out of the kiln, and she's like, just her body language throughout, I think is like, I really think it's a tremendous performance by her. But in that scene in particular, it sticks out where she's like, you see her eyes like darting back and forth between each piece as they're pulling it out, and it's like this successful firing at first, and she's so like obviously excited, and but you know, obviously keeping it reserved and keeping it to herself also. And she says, she's like, good job, girls, like to the sculptors, and it really touched me. And then I think the way that everyone else has this relationship to her, where they're like trying to be nice, mostly like especially in the school system, and like in the visiting artist is like so interested in her work, and then like you get someone at the gallery at the end is like, great work, Lizzie, or whatever, and John Magaro's like, everyone loves kissing your ass on. It's like you just see instantly. It's like him and the mom versus her and Hirsch a little bit. Like they all have their sort of things that made them fall apart from each other, and what makes me so sympathetic to Williams is like the idea of like not being able to take a compliment resonates, and like her feeling like dejected, but everyone is like very obviously open to her. It's an interesting bit of acting on her end, playing that sort of fear.
I do think it's like sort of understandable, and to the extent of just like, yeah, Audrey Benjamin is like very cool when he like sort of fucks up her sculptures a little bit and burns them.
Yeah.
And he's like, that doesn't matter. I like imperfection.
Right. It makes it more interesting.
It makes it more interesting. I like imperfection. You understand, like, if you were Michelle Williams, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I wanted it to look good.
I wanted it to look how I wanted it to look when I spent 19 hours on them, not when that just like it getting fucked up. But it's, I don't know, I guess that's the whole thing of just like, go with the flow you sort of need to be to sort of be able to survive in this kind of environment. How she's sort of kind of too hard to be that pleased. And I think that's sort of like where the animals come into it, where sort of an animal is this perfect example of a thing where it's like, I can love this thing and I can try to take care of it, but at the end of the day, it's an animal. It doesn't get me. It's going to do whatever it's going to do. Like I can't sort of think of this in terms of control, because at the end of the day I might just not have that much of it.
The also that piece though, it's like because she has the bird and she's like taking care of the bird, she like doesn't finish on time, and that's why she needs the second, like she's like, when are you doing another firing to get that the piece in, and then it's because it's there that it's in the hot spot, gets burnt. But then also like the relationship with animals, the scene at the beginning where she's like talking to the cat Ricky and she's like, leave me alone, like I'm trying to do this, will you shut up, like how pissed off she is really
right.
It's really
she hasn't bought food for the cat. She has to go buy food for the cat.
The cat's really good, even though they do injure the bird, but that's just the way the cat
and it's like a very nice I always refer to these as you like Krabby Patties, don't you Squidward relationships, of just like her being at first just like being very mad at the bird, and then just like until like almost the very end not being able to admit to Hong Chau that she really likes the bird and taking care of it, and she has formed an attachment to it.
That, I mean, the sort of, I've seen people sort of unfavorably compare it to a sitcom, the whole movie, and I think I can see parts of it, but in a positive light, where like the situation of it and like this movie having so much like incident where there's the bird and she just like drops it out the window. It's like problem solved. And then the next day Hong Chau's like, I found this bird, will you take care of it? It's like, sure. And then obviously, she gets stuck into it. But the idea that it's like her fault that she has to take care of the bird is really funny.
Hong Chau coming up the sidewalk in her big overalls with the bird and a towel or whatever, being like, hat. Oh my god, I found a bird, is like the biggest laugh of that movie.
It is,
It's so, like, I don't think it's sitcom-y, I just think it's funny.
Sure, I mean, I do agree that it is very funny. People, I mean, this is useless to talk about what people don't like about this movie. But, yeah, I know people have issues with the ending and, like, think it wears its metaphor too strongly on its sleeve. It doesn't really affect White, but
please, the bird flies away.
It's so true. And then they get their nice walk. They show all the power lines. It's beautiful.
Well, something that I do think is interesting is like, obviously, like, it's a movie about artists, and like it is invested in their working process a lot, but like it's not a movie where anyone really talks about the art. Right, beyond like saying like, oh, this is great work, or like congratulations on your work or whatever. Like no one talks really about like the qualities that they are experiencing or what their experience with the art is. And like, and that scene at the end is so interesting too, because like, everyone's like at the reception or at her show, right? And they're like, you see people like taking in the art and like processing it and stuff. But it's sort of like, it is like that show vibe where there's like people are eating, people are having conversations about other things with each other. And then the bird flies, right? And that like captures everyone's attention. Everyone is like completely riveted. It is like that sort of that that thing about like an animal like is just so inherently interesting because you never know what it's gonna do or whatever, and everyone like the shot where everyone runs out to the front of the windows and everyone is crowding in them as the bird finally flies out the door, and I was like the contrast in like the way it shows people being like captivated by something or taking in and processing something was really interesting to me, and that sort of thematic thing is like it's an interesting thing to explore, I think, in especially like I don't like I'm curious what the relationship is on like Kelly Reichardt's part to like people seeing and processing the work, and it's like clearly she really values the process and like the making of something, and it seems like she's less interested in like how it is received afterwards.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly like true. I was reading an interview where she was talking about like all of my movies I'm interested in process, and she was saying it was kind of like a way to like get out of sort of 3-act structure that she always finds herself thinking in, and just like try to do something a little more organic, is just like portray these sort of smaller pieces of things that are more just like how existing actually works. I do also think that like in making a movie about art, like showing that process is sort of the only way to do it, because like artists largely get hives talking when people try to make them talk about their art. I don't think it would make any sense to make a movie about art where they're constantly talking about it and how it works. You do just kind of have to show it and pick things up through that.
There's a great part of the Reichardt-Marin interview where she talks about how worried she is that just the nature of like economic decline in this country and the world in general is such that like artists don't get to just sort of like chill and vibe anymore. And she's like, I think artists do all their like best working, best thinking, best idea generating when they are like doing other stuff, when they're like going to Walgreens or like taking a walk to the post office. And she's concerned that just like people have to do their jobs too much to be able to do that. And I think that sort of like vibing mentality is really like deliberately on display here, where like if I think about like my time like in grad school, I think it was like we went to class and we learned in class, and then after class, because class was at night, we'd go out for 3 hours. And it wasn't like raucous, and usually we were often debriefing class in a much more casual way, but that just felt like an extension of class to an extent, and that kind of learning process. I think about that all the time when I'm like, is it productive for me to like go for this walk? And it's like, yeah, of course it is. Like that's working. The great Rebecca Bolnez always said that texting is writing, and
awesome.
That really helps me get through texting.
That's a great mentality. There's also, I mean, you get a little bit of people talking about art, Andy, with a great scene with James LeGros where he's passing all the stuff around to the students, and he's like, there's a great spontaneity to this pot. It's its own thing.
Oh, there's such a good anecdote about him in one of the interviews, maybe on Little Gold Men, where he was like kind of being kind of an asshole the first day that he was there, where he's like, what is this? What's this crazy thing? And being sort of like trying to be like funny about the art. And Kelly Reichardt was like, I think a lot of this art is like really good. I think he was like, is this supposed to be good or bad? And she's like, it's all good or whatever. And then the next day he came back and like apologized. He's like, I actually thought about it harder, and like there's a lot of really beautiful stuff here, and I'm sorry I did all that.
Trying to be class clown above it all.
She just had to be like, that's not what this is.
Talk about, I mean, look, someone I'd be not cool in front of is Kelly Reichardt. I'm so scared. Sure, you bet,
I mean, obviously she has her academic, I guess, background.
Right.
I don't know if even background is the way. I guess I don't know the right word for it. It is her job sometimes, I guess.
Famously,
which is
on
interesting.
Rate My Professor.
Yeah.
Famously on Rate My Professor. Lots of people complaining about her being mean to them. Which is very funny, especially in context with this movie, which is like, again, most of the actual like school things, everybody seems to be fairly nice and pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was another thing she'd said in an interview that I read this morning, where she was like, I have had terrible academic jobs that I hated, but the bard job I actively tried to get, and I'm around a bunch of people that I like and would not, that is a job I really want to have.
She was doing some funny retcon in interviews, being like, I actually love teaching, and teaching is great. I don't actually doubt that she loves teaching, and I imagine that probably she has some bard students who are huge pills, but when you reread those Rate My Professor reviews, and they're like, if you don't align with her taste, she makes this class hell for you, but then you read about her talking about the stuff she teaches, and it's like, yeah, if you're a student who hates that Kelly Reichardt is teaching Frederick Wiseman, you're probably going to be a little baby about it,
right?
Frankly, and I'm not on your side anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you can never be on the side of undergraduate film students.
Yes, sure.
No, I mean, that's a good point, though. I know. I as a person, as the son of college professors, I am maybe more anti-college professors than most people, I will admit.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not necessarily pro-college professor either, but everyone's annoying.
Yeah.
Is she teaching undergrads, or is
She's teaching undergrad.
That's interesting.
I do. I think Hirsch is great in it.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
I love that he's just got these two random hippies staying with him. Mm-hmm. And they all do bits where they talk in French, fake French accents. Is really funny. The line that that really made me laugh was when he's like, "I need to go to the toilet," and Hirsch's voice obviously selling that line.
Yeah. It's Amanda Plummer from Pulp Fiction and whatnot, and then Matt Malloy, who's a Hal Hartley guy. Both really funny.
They summer in Canada and winter in Mexico, right? That's the line.
That's the life, to be honest. Those were the people where I was like, maybe they got it right.
Sure. Eat some free gallery cheese.
Just sleep at somebody else's house, not paying for it, presumably.
Yeah, and that Williams thinks that they're taking advantage of him is really her biggest concern with that, and he's like, those people are staying with him again, and the mom's like, I don't care. The scene where she goes and visits with Majara at first, where he's eating spaghetti in the dark and is like, the neighbors are controlling my TV. It really made me think of the movie Crumb, the Terry Zwigoff documentary, where Robert Crumb has these he's got two brothers that have their own sort of problems and issues, and there's a scene in that movie where he is visiting with one of his brothers who is really far gone, and it did remind me of that watching it, and just his sort of paranoia about the TV, and the neighbor that is checking it, this sort of scrawny young kid who's checking on him, is really really good.
I enjoy when she offers to buy him the Twilight Zone on DVD. It's not the same if I know which one it is.
Yeah.
I think the first time I saw it, I thought the Megaro stuff was a little overplayed and over dramatized. On second watch it, I softened on it a little. I think because it's funnier. I was like, is this veering into PSA mental health kind of thing? But I think she's playing it a little looser and lighter, and I think once you know that he's gonna show up to the gallery and just be fine and eat the cheese, it takes a lot of the weight off that random little search with Craig. Was it Theo Taplitz from Little Men?
Sure.
Oh right, of course.
I spent a lot of that first watch being like, who is this?
Right.
And it's It's one of the little men from Little Men.
Oh, it's the other. Okay,
it's not Michael Barbieri.
Yeah,
right.
That I was like, where do I know this? That's crazy.
He's growing
I'm like,
up.
how did he wind up in this movie? But
yeah, that's very cool.
I do wonder, because obviously she, like any director, she has the people she works with, but she does seem to be good at just finding some random ass people to put in her movies. I do wonder what her casting process is like.
Ira Sachs does also just feel like he knows everyone. I'm sure it's easy to go to him and be like, is that kid from your movie still around?
Yeah.
He hasn't
not
done
the one.
anything.
Everyone loves the other one.
He hasn't really done much, which is like, I loved seeing him in this. It really just felt like a guy who was around.
Yes.
He's in Gringo, 2018's Gringo.
Oh, Gringo.
We all remember Gringo?
Gringo.
Yeah. That's David Oyelowo?
Yes. Yep.
Charlize Theron?
Charlize? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
For a minute, she was just doing whatever.
Yeah, she kind of had cornrows in the Fast movie, made Gringo. The second viewing, I mean, I watched it fairly recently, so I just was like, let me live in this for a little bit more. And the Hong Chau, they're like, watching it the first time, it was very, I didn't really like see the friendship until the end, and I was like, oh, okay, sure. And then, but there's obviously the scene where she's where they're bandaging the bird, and William's like, oh, you still have like the statue that I made, like the first one, and it's like in her house, and that's very sweet. And then at the end, obviously, she's looking at one of the sculptures, and it's like supposed to be Hong Chau's
right. She's like,
that's me.
Right, yeah,
and I was like, oh god. And then they go on their walk. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Christopher Blofeld.
That's sort of I mean, I was gonna say, I do think that's like just a classic friendship dynamic of just like, you think like one of you has a problem, so you think both of you have a problem with each other, but really you just have a problem with them, and you're putting that on the other person.
Yeah, the ebb and flow there is really good. I mean, and there's a scene where she's like, the third time she's confronting her about the hot water, she's like, I need it for real, like I need it. And she's like, I pay rent. And she's like, not that much. And William's just like, what? And gets at her. And then
it's
tears her flowers out.
I'm so glad they have that moment. Because I never feel doubt that they're friends. But friends say really mean shit sometimes. And the friends with more money often say the meanest shit that they don't even realize that they're saying. Because the money has so dulled them to the practical realities of not having that money.
Yeah. And she's like, I said not that much, and like she sort of wilts a little bit afterwards. Yeah, it's like, I'll fix the hot water, but you like you're getting a good deal. It's like, fuck you. Tear your flowers out. There's so much good stuff with Hong Chau. The cutting between her sort of Williams working in her studio versus Chau working like at the installation space, like mounting this huge piece of foam and wrapping it in like the wire or whatever, and cutting out all while everyone's like drilling in the background is very. It's a nice little bit of like, here's the contrast between two sides of the same coin.
I do. Go ahead.
I think a point that's been often remarked upon is just that Williams is like the only artist we see who's making work about people.
Sure.
That is like an inherently kind of social project that requires her to like look and observe and like see movement, and everyone else is doing things that feel much more abstracted, including Joe's work. And I think Joe's work is really cool and very thrilling to watch, like the process of, maybe more so than taking a plastic fork to clay, but it's more about the spectacle, perhaps, or
I'm
the
sure
textures.
If I walked into a gallery, I would be more attracted to Joe's work than I would be to Michelle Williams' characters. And
there's also like the bit of Williams sort of walks through the space before the opening, and then when Hong Chau shows up, or after that scene is when she's like, you know, one of your fucking people's in my parking spot, and like yelling at her over the phone. But then when Hong Chau shows up, she's like, oh, wow, you came. She's like, of course. Like, that sort of, for Williams, it's like she won't go to hers, and you just got to reach out sometimes, maybe bridge the gap. But I mean, it's really, the relationship with the mom is really funny also, where she's just like, oh, you know, Majaro's a genius. Like, he'll have his thing still, and like the mom, like maybe they just don't show it, but there's obviously the big scene where her walks around the table and is like, great stuff. Like looking at everything, and then the mom just like beelines for the back, and is like, "Your brother's not here" or whatever. Doesn't even look at it.
Hirsch's like 30-second walk around the table makes me cry both times. It's so nice. I'm so glad we get that long moment of him.
It's
observing.
Yeah, taking the time to like the real time that it would take is very important, and then having him just walk around and flirt with everybody at the rest of the party is really great.
Yeah, it
like,
certainly.
That's hilarious.
It certainly does. Like, I feel like when even maybe before it came out, she was just saying like, "Oh yeah, this one's kind of a comedy," and people were like, "Really?" And certainly like having a guy like that just in it holding court helps that come across as like, "Oh yeah, this is absolutely Kelly Reichardt making a comedy," even if it is frequently quite sad. And like I think this morning, just like watching a few scenes, like they do generally play funnier in isolation.
Yeah. I was thinking, just as a person who, I guess, has never really gone to this sort of thing, of just like, it is weird that it's just like this party thing in this room where there's just like 8 sculptures and a little table, and everybody's there for just look at those 8 sculptures for hours, and it's just like...
They're networking.
I guess it's just like there's just like an inherent awkwardness built into it to me, where I'm just like, I guess this is interesting. I guess this is sort of how this world would have to work, where it's just like you don't want to get drowned out by putting it in a bigger gallery with a bunch of stuff, and you don't.
Yes.
Gallery openings are very funny to go to as a civilian who does not have the money to buy the art, because even if you know the artist, which sometimes I have, very exciting to see their work, they need to talk to the people who are buying the work. And so they're like, hi, thanks for coming. And then it's like, you're invisible. You're just doing your lap around the table along with people who are gajillionaires, just being like, oh, well, that would be cool if I had $8,000 spare dollars, whatever. And it's a very sort of odd dynamic, but it's also kind of cool to have these like singular rooms or like 2-part rooms that are just dedicated to one person without sort of the encroaching like bureaucracy of your museum like pressing down on you. But it's like going shopping, which is maybe just why I like it.
That's I never would look at the price tags, I guess. I've been to like a few through when I was taking high school art, we had to go to like First Friday and like do a bunch of stuff like that, and it's just like, you know, smaller artists obviously, but I never thought to look at the price tags. That wasn't really when I was 17. I'm like processing like what the art is and like talking about that more often.
Now it's like you get a sheet, but you have to like ask someone. You're like, oh, can I see the sheet of paper with all the prices? And then they're like, oh, I'll go get it for you. But it's like, otherwise if you were like, can I have a program, like there's no program. It's like you get the list of what's for sale.
It's a very like anxiety provoking just like space to be in, with just like so having that art all around. Like I was helping a friend show some stuff off hours to some curators in a gallery that she works in that had an ongoing exhibit, and it was like terrifying to just be like walking around and moving large things around in that space.
And I guess it is sort of like going shopping, but to me the difference is just like, I think there's just like more of a social expectation that doesn't exist with like going out shopping, that sort of, I think, is what provokes the anxiety. Whereas just like when I go shopping, I can just put AirPods in and just look at the stuff, and nobody feels like they need to talk to me. Whereas it feels like there's more of an atmosphere of conversation that I maybe don't want to get in. I don't know, maybe I'd go to a gallery and have fun.
I was also constantly worried that something was going to get broken at some point.
Yes.
Like,
totally. Completely.
Those kids start running at one point, and I was like, no running, please. Like, they have a ball or something, too. It's like, this is going to be, like, a disaster. But
well, it's even like when she first brings the pigeon in after Hong Chau gives it to her, there's just the energy of, like, she's working on the thing, and there's like the cat, there's the bird, there's this noise happening, and it's just like, oh no, is one of the pieces going to break? Is this going to be the thing? And then, you know, eventually it's the burn on the piece that is the thing that sort of sets her off. But there is the tension of like I kept thinking about that. It was like, is something going to get like bumped by someone carelessly, and like they won't think it's a big deal, it'll be a big deal. But
and like it functions similarly to the Majaro stuff, where like you feel like there's a lot of tension, but like you feel like something really bad might happen and it never does,
which is, I mean, look, that's what Lizzie thinks.
And I think it's what Reichardt thinks too. I think that's her general mentality, not only within the context of her films, but like her professional outlook. I think like the constant fear of something really bad happening in a movie that comes out after the last one got sort of like knocked over by COVID feels, I don't know, kind of apparent.
I was surprised that she worked with A24 again. I feel like she pretty explicitly said she was mad at them for not putting out First Cow quicker, and then they did the same thing, but could just be a matter of no one else wants to give her that money to make stuff, so just has to deal with the movies barely getting released.
We've talked about it a few times. It keeps coming up about how A24 just doesn't put out what looks better.
Well, I think, and often like movies by women, frankly.
That's true.
Also.
I mean, the Hog is the other one, where it's like they didn't do anything with Souvenir 2, they didn't do anything with Eternal Daughter, and it's like people like Souvenir 1 in my memory. Like it was well received, certainly.
Eternal Daughter is the one for me where I was so glad that I saw it at TIFF, because if I had not, that movie did not play anywhere in DC at all. But then like Denis also stars at noon, barely played anywhere. That fortunately did get like a week of having half a screen in one theater here. But and like those are both the movies they have released by women recently, and also the good movies they have released recently. Like Past Lives, they're being kind of weird,
and they did a good job with the Hollow Center. I think the Hollow Center played here for a while.
Oh sure,
the Hollow Center is still playing here.
I think that's true here as well.
But I don't know.
Like, you have Julia Louis-Dreyfus in that, so like there's But,
I mean, Michelle Williams. She should be the Cell, maybe. I don't know.
I sort of think at this point Reichardt will just take the money where she can get it. Which respect. And so in order to get the sort of, I'm sure she's not asking for a lot, but to get what she wants without sort of conflict or intervention is just maybe more worth it. That she now has come to understand that, like, I mean, almost in like a James Gray Ian way, that her stuff is just going to be more appreciated overseas, and whatever gets it in front of an international audience is maybe just the way to go.
Right, it's just like the lower budget version of, I guess I have to make all my movies with Netflix or Apple.
Yeah. I feel like Haynes is probably also like being like, just take the money from where you could get it, as has kind of been his way.
Who has
Netflix,
the new one?
It's
Netflix, of course, right? They bought
picked it up.
Yes.
Which I assume they don't have it internationally. I think someone else, at least not in, I think someone else would have had to buy it in France because of Cannes stuff. But
I mean, there's so much. It is just a movie with its sort of stressors and its tension. I do just feel like the time melts away both times I've watched it. It is
absolutely.
It very, in a way that her movies like have it before for me, where I'm just sort of like locked in, completely enamored with every sort of detail, and like the way that she just I can't stop talking about how good it looks, but that it all just feeds itself. It looks so good, it feels good to watch, it feels good to just sit in. A nice 100-minute masterpiece.
I mean, like, going back to the early question of like where we are at with her, I've never been like down on her, but certainly this like feels like one of her best movies to me. And like First Cow does too, even though I have my weird thing with that movie where I still have not seen it in high definition.
I mean, any closing thoughts on showing up?
There I get annoyed when this dialogue happens on Twitter about how all the major directors are now only making movies that take place in the past. And like no one is making movies about contemporary stuff. But now I think when directors maybe not that famous as like Spielberg or Scorsese are making these contemporary movies, people are like, it's just about a guy. It's just about a guy who lives now. Like, who gives a shit about that? And like, my first instinct upon seeing Showing Up was that like it's so normal that people are gonna write this off as like minor, but it is like a complete major work by like one of I think the best living filmmakers, done the disservice of the fact that like we now don't care about stuff unless we know it was important 10 to 100 years ago. And so I think compared to First Cow, it's sort of like, oh, she scaled back or something like that. But like, I think she scaled up. No, she's only going up.
I agree. Yeah. It feels it feels much larger than First Cow.
Yeah.
I mean, like, art is expensive. There's a bunch of art in the movie.
I mean, and also, you know, she's expanding her frame. She's out of that closed aspect ratio that she used to love.
The other thing that did come to mind briefly while I was watching is I've seen about half of the first season of Lucky Hank on AMC, which is also set in like a small college that's like an English department with Bob Odenkirk. And it is like, it was interesting, sort of like that one is obviously, it's much more TV and like story and like not as interested in like anyone's work other than like perhaps to make fun of the poetry professor's poem or whatever. Like, but yeah, it was interesting to have both of them at the same time, and especially like because no one's talking about Lucky Hank or thinking about it. But I was like, oh, this is like they're companion pieces in a way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like, I think that the portrayal of the school in this, of like the workings of the school in this movie, is probably much more functional than that actual school is in real life.
Yeah. There's also like sort of the half gag, half taking it seriously type thing of when the model like runs through and gets up to the stage and like poses is just like a funny little insert of like this guy like hurriedly getting back to the stage, and it's just like, here's this little moment. Yeah, all those little asides of just like, here's the world that we're all living in, where there's these people doing like experimental light art and like people painting, people doing all the, you know, figure work and things.
Yeah, it never strikes me as not taking any of the work seriously, even when it is silly. I think it always feels very clear to me that like that is the point and good.
Yes, yeah. And then Heather Lawless, I believe, is
great.
The
yes,
she's the visiting artist.
What a role!
And
what a part!
When she's sort of like, as they're pulling all the figures out, all the sculptures out of the kiln, and she's just like playing basketball is very funny. I mean, the fashion in this movie is great. Everyone's so cool looking. Crocs are cool again. It's awesome.
I'd argue Crocs are cool for the first time.
They're like the number one selling item on Amazon. Phil was telling me this. That's like funny. Do any of you wear Crocs? I have 2 pairs.
Yeah, I've got some Crocs. I need a new pair.
Yeah, I wear Keens, which someone needs to wear in a movie and make that look cool.
Yeah, I'm in a.
It's sort of crazy. No one in Showing Up was wearing Keens.
Yeah, no one had any Tevas on or whatever. Diva. Crocs. The problem is with Crocs is usually with shoes, because I've got a wider foot. I just have to scale up a little bit.
Right.
Crocs you don't need. So now I've got like clown shoe Crocs. I need to scale back, get a size that fits a little better, and then, you know, you wear it out. It'll fit to the foot. But I'm pro Croc for sure.
Yeah, I wore Crocs as like a child, and Keens were the transition out of like, oh, these will actually stay on my feet.
Yeah. I've never worn a Croc. Any shoe that doesn't require a sock, I'm like,
I was about to say,
my feet get too sweaty. I can't do it.
So you can't wear socks and Crocs. For the record.
Okay, good to know.
It's allowed.
Probably still won't get any. Probably not in.
But you're so validated, because the sweaty foot and the Croc is a problem that I have.
Yeah.
Sure, and maybe that is less a problem in Keens, because that is the main thing for me, is I do not wear socks almost ever if I can avoid it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, for me, like, you can wear socks and Crocs, but that is anti to the spirit of why I would ever wear a Croc. Whereas, like, if I'm wearing a Croc, it's just so I can wear something I can slip into quickly and just, like, go to a corner store and get something to drink. It is deliberately for the purpose of avoiding having to put on socks.
Yes. Also, just, like, my feet get very warm.
Yeah.
I wear mine almost exclusively indoors. They're an indoor shoe for me because I hate being barefoot
like
at
a house
home.
Shoe. Sure.
Yeah.
You don't want to step on something.
No, when I cook, I don't want to get food on my feet.
Yeah.
My 2 cents.
Yeah.
We love Crocs. But yeah,
love is maybe.
Yeah, I do not endorse that sentiment. I don't think. But
the royal we.
Crocs are useful, and there's a place for them. Is where I stand on Crocs.
I straight up think they look cool, and I'm not talking about tidbits or whatever. I don't have any of the charms. A standard Croc. Michelle Williams has got the white ones. Hong Xiao's got like navy blue ones. Cool, just cool shoe, cool design. It's sort of like, the Birkenstock that covers the top foot.
How are we still talking about this?
That's sort of popular now.
Yeah. The clog.
The clog, sure, yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. If they made this in 2011, then they'd all be wearing Toms.
I had no idea you had. I had no idea you had this many shoe thoughts, Cullen. This is
Andy,
really.
Who do you think I am?
I mean, sure. I guess we've just never broached the subject.
You're
before.
not really a sneakerhead like me. But yeah, we can move on. Do we want to straight move on to final special presentations?
I think we maybe could.
Does anyone have one right off the bat? I can go if no one does. If everyone needs a second to think.
I can go.
Please.
I have been rewatching the first season of WGN America's Manhattan. Which is streaming on various free with ads platforms. I'm watching it mostly on Tubi. It's on Freevee. It's on a few other things, I think. And I watched the first season at the time, and I watched like the first couple of episodes of the second season and fell off. With Oppenheimer coming up, I was like, I kind of think I like that time period and like stories set around that sort of thing. And this is like the premise of Manhattan is that it's set in the camp. Oppenheimer is like a very small recurring character. He's not like in every episode or anything. He's sort of like the mysterious odd boss man, but it's mostly about John Benjamin Hickey plays Frank Winter, who's like he has a ragtag group of scientists who are like an offshoot who are not working on the main atomic bomb design, but they're like a backup plan. It's crazy how many like big people are in the show, like Rachel Brosnahan, Michael Chernus, Daniel Stern. It's like the place where like I first clocked a lot of people, I think, and I like returning to it. It's been really good. I'm like halfway through the first season, I think, and it is very like TVE. Katja Herbers is also in it. Olivia Williams. I think it's really well done. I remember like the episodes of season 2 that I watched I really liked, and then I just fell off for reasons I don't remember, but I'm looking forward to finishing it this time through, and I think it's worth a look if you're intrigued for Oppenheimer and are like, something in that maybe will scratch the itch before it comes out. I think it is worth a look, and it's widely available. So Manhattan, originally from WGN America.
And if you're a Kelly Reichardt fan, the episodes that Oppenheimer is in, it appears that he's played by Daniel London.
Brosnahan post House of Cards, pre Maisel.
Right.
Sort of an interesting spot in her career.
Yep. David Harbour's in it. It's directed by Tommy Schlamme, a lot of it, like the pilot and the finales. So it does have a lot of style and stuff. I think it's got a lot going for it. They were really trying to like make WGN America prestige dramas a thing.
Well, they had that other what was the other show they had on there?
They had the Harriet Tubman show too, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So they were really going for it, and then like no one wanted to figure out how to watch WGN America shows, so it failed spectacularly. But we got some good stuff out of it, I think.
Yeah, we got 2 seasons of Manhattan. What's better than that, baby? I'll go. I watched Drive recently for the first time in a while, sort of post my discovery of the rest of Nicholas Winding Refn's work. And the Drive soundtrack still goes so hard.
Of course.
And it is huge bangers on it. When I was watching it, I was like, this is going to be good. I'm excited to watch this movie. And then they start playing Kavinsky Nightcall, and I was like, 5 stars, 5 stars. A different story happens with the rest of the movie, but the soundtrack still just slaps.
I deliberately avoided seeing Drive upon release because the culture around it was so annoying. I only saw it for the first time, I want to say in late 2019, early 2020. And I was like, pretty good movie. It was really good to wait 9 years and watch it and be like, you know what? Cool.
There's a progression you can chart for Refn where it's like, Drive feels so Hollywood to me now, which is crazy because the reputation at the time was like this arty, austere movie. No one talks, and it's like watch Too Old to Die Young. That no one talks for real, and that is 12 hours long. But the progression, Only God Forgives is sort of an anomaly. He's obviously working out things stylistically there that he'll come to use later. He's experimenting more with just gels and all this shit that he's throwing at it. But then it's Drive, and then there's an upgrade to Neon Demon, which I think is forming more ideas that he'll explore in Too Old to Die Young. It's all sort of this LA trilogy, I think, of starting with Drive, excluding Only God Forgives. But then, everything sort of comes to a head. All worlds meet in Too Old to Die Young, and it's that's the real plug. Too Old to Die Young. Watch that.
I definitely my experience with Drive is that one of my college friends hosted a movie night every Sunday, and we all go over to his apartment and watch a movie. And he definitely he showed Drive, and I definitely ruined that screening by being so vocally mad about the movie and saying annoying things how can you treat Joan that way, talking about Christina Hendricks and stuff. I was really obnoxious about how much I didn't like that movie, but
that's funny.
Bad movie is my opinion.
Yeah, nothing for me.
She plays Blanche in Drive, which I forgot, which is very funny. I saw it for the first time when I was 16 or it was I remember my English teacher, I was she saw Drive. She was like, that movie sucks. I was like, no, you get it all wrong, teach. It's awesome.
Yeah, I saw Drive when I should have been most primed to Drive, and it was just there's nothing here.
It's a very
as a Refn.
It gave us.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it gave us Hotline Miami, and that's all. That's all I really need from Drive.
As a Refn guy, Colin, are you gonna dip in? Are you into the Kojima stuff? Are you a Death? Are you compelled by their relationship?
100%. I love the friendship. I love seeing the friendship on Twitter. I respect Kojima a lot as an artist. I don't personally. I've tried his games. I can't really get into them. The Death Stranding, it stressed me out too much. I couldn't get to whatever point where the game starts being the game because the prospect of getting caught by those what is it, BTs, what do they call them?
Yeah, the BTs, the goop.
Yeah, scared me so much that I just was agitated, shoulders up the entire time playing it, that I couldn't really get into it. But I use the GIF of him giving a thumbs up all the time.
Oh, it's so good.
I'm very happy to have a video game rendered Nicholas Winding Refn in the world.
Yeah, I never finished that game, but I did enough where I was I've seen enough.
Yeah.
But I played right after my roommate, who played for forever, I felt. And when I started playing, I was like, what do you do, after you've been killed or when you get got by the BTs? And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, it's the main thing that comes to get you in the game. And he was like, well, I never got by it.
That's
and
crazy.
I was like, okay, well, we're playing. I mean, this is someone who 100%ed Elden Ring, so it's we're talking different levels of game. But I was like, okay, so you can't even help me because you didn't even ever. He's like, well, I never died playing Death Stranding. I was like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not my plug, but Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, one of the great games.
That is the one with the long cutscenes, right?
They're all the ones.
Well, I know. What was the one? I feel like there's
four is the
one.
one where people really. There's 2-hour cutscenes in that game. But,
there was definitely waiting for my brother to finish with a PlayStation, and he was like, "Just one more cutscene." I was like, "Okay," and then it was fucking feature length.
I think, no joke, that last cutscene of Metal Gear Solid 4 is an hour and 30.
It's feature length.
Well, I think the Death Stranding ending is 90 minutes. And I came home when my roommate was like beating it, so I watched like 50 minutes of it.
And this is like, I do respect that. As like,
there's a
part, I do too.
The form of what a video game is. Like,
there's a part towards the end of Metal Gear Solid 5 where it's not a cutscene, but you do like get in a car with like the bad guy, and it's just like a monologue where the car is driving, and that goes on for like half an hour, where you can just look around but do nothing else but listen to the bad guy talk.
It's Locke.
And that's very fun.
I feel that is like I never really. I feel like you need to do the early games to get the later games. Like hopping in 5, I was like, what am I supposed to do?
I 1,000% hopped in on. I had played a little bit of the previous ones, but it's we can't go deep on the
we can't start.
Right here, but it plays much better than all the other.
Sure, I mean, the technology.
It is by far the best play out of all of them.
I remember Snake Eater being a very cool game to me as an idea, but I never was,
That's a lot of Kojima where he's like cooking with
his
some
ideas,
gameplay stuff to some extent, to where maybe the games don't play as good as just like how crazy some of the stuff is. Just like, oh, you can just sit here and the guy will die of old age or whatever it is.
But I think recently on Twitter, Nicholas Winding Refn and Kojima were like, we had never met physically before. We'd only been on FaceTime or something like that, and it was very nice to see that.
And they hung out around New York, and when Refn took him around the places he needed to see in New York, one of them was just the Strand, which is very fun.
Yeah, what a guy.
It is.
I mean, and Drive as a movie, I said on Letterboxd, it's so sincere. It's a very earnest movie of just like, here is what I think is cool. Here is what I think is like a cool Hollywood movie. And he's just like showing his ass in a way that he's a very good guy, I think. I have not seen any pre-Drive, so maybe I'll get into Bronson.
The Pusher
Bronson's
trilogy.
crazy. I would really like to watch the Pusher trilogy. I like Bronson.
Yeah. Valhalla Rising also I should see. But yeah, anyone Jesse?
Sure. I teed up last week a trilogy.
Yes, you have 3. Yes.
Yeah, a trilogy of special presentations related to my recent trip to Harrisburg. We did already record the end of next week's episode, so the third part is gonna have to wait a week. But the second, the sort of fun middle part of the trilogy where things start coming together is I'd like to recommend Throwing Up in the Emergency Room. I think certainly I cannot recommend. Well, I can recommend going into the emergency room, and that if you think you need to go to the emergency room, you should go to the emergency room. But it's a terrible experience, but an experience that is only plussed by throwing up. It is an excuse to get up and walk around a little bit. It's an excuse to go talk to someone and not feel like you're being annoying. Be like, oh, something actually happened. And I don't know how common this is, but in my case, it got me put in a bed out in the hallway where I could try not to watch people come in off of ambulances for like another hour while no one saw me. So
great.
What was it last week? What was the
last week? It was pretzels with everything seasoning.
Great.
Right.
Yeah,
I forgot about
sure.
that.
It's just making sure we have the trilogy all sort of neatly. In our heads.
Sure. I mean,
I'm less excited to buy the first plug now. Now that 2 is throwing up.
Yeah, well, these did happen on different days, but certainly it is a real speaks in favor of the pretzel that I was able to enjoy it while quite ill.
Sure.
And what the third thing is going to be is not a secret. I have talked about it publicly, but yes. Yeah, look forward to that in 2 weeks, I guess.
Are you feeling better?
Yes, I feel
Good.
I am largely recovered. The procedure was maybe not as easy as it could have been, but it's still an appendectomy, which is about as easy a surgery as you can have.
Sure.
Scary.
Emilio, Fran?
I can go. I just finally read the Patrick Radden Keefe IRA book, Say Nothing.
Sure.
With a big, post-colon title. This is the kind of book that has been recommended to me for years, 5 of them specifically. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I couldn't put it down. It's like 400 pages. I read it, I think, in 4 days. I was like housing this book, and I think it's a real feat of journalism, and I think it's quite morally muddy. I think it makes terrorism look sexy but also bad, you know?
The killer combo.
I had a great time with it, so I recommend.
Awesome.
I often think books recommended to me are not good. I don't know why.
Sure. A lot of pressure on a book recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah.
There's so much commitment.
Yeah.
Amelia?
Kenneth. I've like halfway through a lot of things, and I always feel bad about recommending things that I am not like all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
In a future episode, I recommend an album that I would listen to because of a book I was listening to, so I guess I'll just do another, and I'll say I like Black Flag's first album, Damage. That's good.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Fran, for being
Fran.
on.
Thank you for having me back.
Always a pleasure.
Yes.
Is there anything you would like of your own now to promote, plug?
I would love to plug Fran Magazine, my Substack.com. We have fun there. It's a chill summer.
So true.
And that is it. Bright Well Dark Room, where I'm going to have an Asteroid City review up. And we're also about to have a Vacations issue, which will be a lot of fun too.
Well, then I think with that, if you want to follow the podcast on Twitter while it's still around, we're at Can I Kick It? And we're on letterboxd and Instagram at CIKIPod. We're on YouTube. What's the YouTube, Emilio? Is it just Can I Kick It?
I think it's just Can I Kick It?
Okay.
Yeah, if you search Can I Kick It on YouTube,
we're uploading episodes to YouTube now, just the audio. And then
we're gonna go viral.
It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna do clickbait titles, soy face thumbnails, the whole 9. And if you want to email us any questions, we're at canikickitpod@gmail.com. I don't know if I said we're on TikTok also at CanITicket. We're trying to figure out the new media landscape. And our coffee, if you would like to donate any money to us, you can do that at ko-fi.com/cani. And it's always appreciated. Our theme song is by Tree Related, who's on Spotify and SoundCloud at Tree Related. I am on Twitter at Clatchley. Andy's Andy T. Germ. Emilio's I'm Laugh Alone. And Jesse is JP Glickweber.
And with that, I will release our audience.
Bye.
Bye.